Hello, and welcome to another week of learning about and experiencing how to teach elementary writing. I'm going to start with an apology. This week has been crazy, and as you see, I'm in my bedroom in a hooded sweatshirt doing this because I'm hiding from my children. My husband had gallbladder surgery on Friday, and it has been a challenge to do all of everything around here. So I apologize for looking a slight bit unprofessional today. I also want to start with some announcements. First of all, the discussions on the discussion board are astounding. I'm loving reading through them. I'm doing my best to reply and not miss anybody. But as I said, things have been kind of crazy around here, so I've been doing my best. I even shared some of your responses with Tanya to her interview. It was funny that you guys, a few of you commented on our friendship, and she thought that was hilarious. So thank you for those great questions that you provided. That's what makes the interviews awesome. I updated a few things in e-learning that I want to show you about. So I'm going to switch my screen here a second. Okay, so under course information documents, I have an updated schedule. I actually created it as a link so that whenever I revise it, it will it'll just be on here. And also you can see it this way without having to open it. So this is what I started highlighting what we're done with, and I started and I've updated a few things. So for one, you're not going to be able to view the interview with Dr. Slanger. And this is again I feel like the theme for this week is going to be Mrs. Katie Slider is sorry. So you all asked amazing questions, and she gave amazing answers, and it was fun, and it was about 30 minutes of greatness, and I was so appreciative that she took out the time because her schedule is insane. And so then I went to convert the file so that I could upload it to YouTube, and it's gone. It's gone. Once the file uploaded to YouTube, it only had the last 2 minutes. I was like, where is it? I watched the whole thing. So it's gone. And after, thinking about every option and shedding some tears over a wonderful interview up and eaten by technology, I decided I was not going to ask her to redo it because we just so crunch for time in our district. And I know that as an administrator at the central office, she did me a huge favor, and I just couldn't ask her to do it again. So I am going to do my best. She answered questions beautifully, so I'm doing my best right now to type out some of the questions and some of the responses she gave. Plus, she gave some really good reading suggestions, and so I'm going to get those to you hopefully soon this week as well. So I will get you the meat of the good stuff she talked about. But again, I'm sorry. So that's mine. Although, it means you've got less to do, I guess, this week. But it is sad because that's one of the more interesting things. Because the people that I ask obviously can give a perspective that I can't give on all things education. So I did add in, since last looking at this, I added in a sixth grade. He works at our Mr. Jake Downing works at our intermediate building in my district, and our intermediate building just has fifth and sixth grades. And I believe this year, if it's the same as last year, he does sixth grade social studies and ELA. And so, and he's a big advocate. He does cool stuff in his room with writing and pairing writing and social studies and reading and social studies. So I'm really excited that I could fit him on the schedule, especially since we lost Dr. Slanger's perspective. The other thing that I'm working on getting possibly towards the end, we have an elementary special ed teacher in my district who I am looking to interview for, especially since there's so many of you interested in special ed, but also because I don't feel like if you're not going into special ed, I don't know that teaching programs do a very good job to prepare those of us who are going into general ed for the fact that we are still going to have to teach special ed students. And I think Tanya brought that to light in the interview to a lot of you. So I'm hoping to get Miss Julia Tessier, third grade. She taught third grade for a long time, but she does, I believe she's resource room this year. So I'm hoping to get her in. And then I'm going to approach my own co-teacher because some of you brought up like the co-teaching thing. What is that? No, not everybody co-teaches. Generally, they pair, at least at the secondary level, they pair a gen ed teacher in English and math in my district. In English, a general ed English teacher and a general ed math teacher are paired with a grade level special education teacher to co-teach 1 or 2 hours a day of kids who are in the inclusive class but could use the extra support. So I might see if I can get Melissa, she's my coach, she co-teaches with me, if I can coax her to create a video with me because she's the best. I am a better teacher because of her. So I'm going to try to do that for you as well on our schedule. So as those things come up, I will be adding and moving things around on there. Let me see what else. Oh, I also changed. So you'll see here, responses to Article of the Week 3 and 4 are due by the 27th. And then instead of on Wednesday, I don't know what I was thinking. You don't have to respond to Article of the Week 5 and 6 until next week. So if our people who are doing Article of the Week 5 and 6, you have until the 27th. You don't have to have it done by Wednesday. You can have until the 27th. So this is your best go-to place for what is due because it's even in checklist form. So be checking back here often. Okay, so if I go back to here, there's a new assignment sheet here in eLearning as well. Let's see if I can go. I probably can't. Let's go. Katie's just fumbling around today. Okay, so then if we go back to table of contents and assignment sheets, in here is where like the nitty gritty of what's due. Like this tells you what you're supposed to do for article of the week or for the guest speakers or for your discussion posts and your reading responses. I added the literacy narrative, which hopefully you've listed some ideas and expanded a couple into paragraphs. I expanded mine into paragraphs. I have two. I picked two different, there we go, two different memories. One of being split into reading groups by, it wasn't like random, you know what I mean? It was the high, medium, and low group. And then I also wrote about writing across the curriculum in high school and how I didn't feel like my high school did it correctly. So I expanded those into paragraphs. So those were the first two steps that we took so far for our drafting. Here, this is the whole like layout of the literacy narrative. So it will count as your midterm grade. It should be a narrative form because that is what that's one of the genres that we teach in Michigan according to the Common Core State Standards. The format, eventually the final draft should be 75 to 1,000 words. That's like 3 to 4 pages-ish in MLA format. So make sure you know what that looks like. That includes, the double spacing, the 1-inch margins, and so on and so forth. If you're unsure, please look it up. And then this is what I will be using as the assignment. So your topic is your literacy journey, things that made a difference. So, and I put the focus here, but this is what you should do. This according to the Common Core State Standards for 11th and 12th grade. So the highest from kindergarten to 12th, this is the highest it gets. This is what we expect narratives to do for as they go into college. So this is what I will be using to score yours as well. And so then your essay should focus on your experiences with the written word. Which experiences were effective in your growth as a writer? Which experiences turned you off to writing? Reflect on the environments created by teachers that either helped or hindered your growth. So it's kind of like you're telling a story, but you're also analyzing your own journey to where you are as comfort level. And we're going to be looking at motivation here in a couple minutes, and that will make more sense, I think, as we go through the lecture. So, and then the final draft will be due October 24 at 11:59 p.m. and be worth 200 points. And then I also linked here to, if you open this, I linked to the rubric, which is basically these things. Okay, let's see. So I covered everything on here. Oh, number 5, reminders about your responses. So on the discussion boards, I'm not huge with grading, obviously your spelling and mechanics and things like that. I see it as kind of a chat board for us, although I do expect you to back up what you say. So if you make a statement of some sort of statement, you have the evidence to back that up. However, when you're writing your reading responses on the chapters and stuff that we read, I need you to make sure you're proofreading. There are some people who are writing it as one solid paragraph, and that isn't what I should be seeing at the college level. I need it to be organized and thought out, answering the prompt, showing me that you read by being able to refer back to the prompt or the reading, and making sure that you're using the correct there, and there, and all of those things that I expect future teachers who are college students taking a methods course at the 300 level should be able to do. If you have questions on usage or on what something should look like, feel free to email me and I can help you. Otherwise, we do have the Writing Center that goes through Teams. I don't know if any of you have used that before. It's a great resource to have somebody else look at your writing, even if it's just one reading response, and ask, what could I do better for these? And then take notes on that and just do that from now on. They're very helpful at the Writing Center. So please make sure that you are looking over your responses before you turn them in. Okay, this week. So this week some people have already responded to Bailey and Haley and their articles of the week that are super interesting. I've read through most of it, but I haven't had a chance to go back and reply. And then by the end of the week, Catherine and Brittany S. will be posting articles of the week 5 and 6 for us. So they have that extra homework assignment in there this week to find their articles of the week. You will be reading chapter 3 in The Writing Thief, which is on informational writing, and we're going to be talking about that more next week. And then obviously submit that via Dropbox. Our next, this week you're going to be, I'll be interviewing Bethany DeGraff, first grade teacher, and you'll be submitting questions for Mrs. Dawn Mast, who is a 5th grade teacher. So make sure that you get that done, and then begin drafting your literacy narrative, which we'll talk a little bit more about as I go through the motivation process. This is usually where I would ask for questions, but I can't see you. Hopefully, if you have questions, you're emailing them to me. Okay, so a few words about the Common Core state standards and 6+1 writing traits. All of these chapters that we will be reading, we'll be reading informational first, then narrative, then argumentative. Those are the 3 genres that your book covers, because those are the 3 genres that the Common Core state standards cover. And when let me get out of this one more time. That was one other thing that I added into our assignment sheets was links to, I think I put it in here, didn't I? Oh no, I bet I put it in module 3. In module 3, in here, I put links to the 6+1 writing traits. So if you open that up, you should be able to see the 6+1 writing traits here are ideas, organization, voice, word choice, sentence fluency, conventions, and then the +1 is presentation. Those are the 6 or 7. Sometimes presentation isn't judged or evaluated, but those are the writing traits that we look at and teach when we teach informational, and then we teach them again for narrative, and then we teach them again for argumentative, because you do them differently in each genre that you write. So the way the Writing Thief is set up is, for informational this week, you'll read about teaching informational writing, and then it will give you some mentor texts that you could use to teach kids how to generate ideas, or how to teach students different ways to organize informational reading, and so on and so forth. So, and then if you want, I have a really battered copy of this in my classroom. This is how we rate them. A 1 is not yet, all the way to 5 being you are above and beyond. You show total mastery of this trait. But like, so here, ideas. This shows you what we're looking for at each level when it comes to ideas. So how would you evaluate a paper if you're evaluating the ideas trait? And we will talk more about evaluation later in the semester, but you don't have to always be evaluating all 6 traits on everything kids turn in. Sometimes we just focus on a few of these. So this will be a big help for helping you understand what they're talking about when they talk about the traits of writing. The other thing that may be a helpful resource to you is that I put in a link to the Common Core State Standards, the ELA. It will bring you to this page. If you click writing, it gives you here all of the different grades, the standards for each of these in writing. If you look at kindergarten, this, let's see, this bottom one is narrative. So this is the kindergarten standard for narrative. Use a combination of drawing, dictating, and writing to narrate a single event or several loosely linked events. Tell about the events in the order in which they occurred and provide a reaction to what happened. So you'll see this is where we start with narrative writing and reading with mentor text. This is what we ask of our littlest learners. And then you can go all the way to the 11th, 12th grade. And the narrative, this is what I'm expecting that you all can do when you write your literacy narrative, is to write narratives to develop real or imagined, real in this case, events using effective technique, well-chosen details, and well-structured event sequences. And then it breaks it down by setting out the problem, like having a good intro, using narrative techniques like dialogue and all of pacing and reflection, multiple plot lines if you're writing a story, sequencing techniques, precise word and phrase use, sensory language, the whole show, don't tell aspect of writing, and a conclusion. So you'll see it started, we build on this, and if you have a lot of time on your hands, you can go and look at what the narrative standard is for each grade, starting with kindergarten, and see how they build on each other. And that's sort of what we're doing here with elementary writing. And if you're super interested, you can always look at the other ones too. We have the reading, the 3 different reading strands of standards, the speaking, listening, and then language. And then the appendices give examples. We will actually be looking at some of these later on in the semester to look at what they mean by each standard. But that we'll be doing with the evaluation. But anyway, if for now you wanted to have a better idea, this is what we as teachers build our lessons off of, at least in Michigan and any other state that uses the Common Core state standards. I personally have found them very helpful because in the past, it went by district. And I remember when I first started, I was handed a red binder and said, just teach this stuff. And I could pick and choose. And if I had a child switched at semester, they may have already done the things that I did. We weren't all reading the same stuff, which is fine in some senses, but then we weren't also teaching the same skills. And so this really streamlines things a little better, in my opinion. All right, so those are my words that I wanted to give you guys about those 2 things. I really think they don't ask you to look at them in the text, but I really think that analyzing those and looking through those frequently, I have them bookmarked. Like I said, I have a shabby copy of the 6+1 traits, but I also have that link bookmarked on my computer at school, and I look at the Common Core state standards all the time when I'm unit planning. So it's helpful to just get used to them now and know where to find them. Okay, so you will be reading informational about teaching informational texts. But my lecture, and I'll talk more about that next week in my lecture. This week's lecture is on motivating writers. So we've talked about the setting up, and we've talked about creating this atmosphere that's conducive to writers and welcoming to writers. So now we want to look at, well, what motivates writers? And if we were together in person, this is where I would pause and I would ask you to write about a time or a teacher or a task that was super motivating that you couldn't wait to do in terms of writing, and something that you remembered hating. You had no motivation to do it. Nothing could make you want to do it. And I would ask you to write about that for maybe 5 to 7 minutes. And then we would share about those experiences. If you still would like to write that down to kind of get the juices flowing, you can pause me right here, take some time to write about it. And who knows, that could end up in your literacy narrative as well. So you can pause me. Okay, you unpaused me. So we're back. So what we're going to kind of talk about is we're going to look at what motivation actually means and lack of motivation means, because lack of motivation is not the same thing as being lazy. And I think some of the worst teachers that I have worked with have equivocated lack of motivation to laziness, and they have written children off as just being lazy. And very rarely do you find a lazy child. You might have a child with no motivation, but you don't have a lazy child, because they show a lot of motivation for other things in their life. So we need to kind of clip that prior thought or bias out of our head right now, that not having motivation is the same thing as laziness, because it's not. And then we're also going to talk about some best practices that foster motivation for kids to write in school. So first of all, let's look at what a motivated writer looks like. A motivated writer is interested in the writing task and can find value in it, and They can feel confident in their writing competence, that they know what they're doing and they feel confident that they can do it. And then they also have to trust that their work is going to be evaluated fairly. If you are missing any of these things, it is going to reduce motivation. So I can use my own students and I can use my children as examples here. I have had in my early years of teaching, I have been told what I'm supposed to assign my students to read, and they did not find interest in it. It was not the task wasn't interesting, and they did not see a value in writing in that way. They felt confident they could do it, and they knew that I was a fair evaluator, but they had no interest in it. And what they turned in, if they turned it in at all, was not their best work, because they weren't motivated to do it. It just get it done to get it done. On the other hand, I have a kid of my own who can find something super interesting and thinks that, we get to write about this, and I get to pick the topic, and it's going to be great, and we're going to make this thing. And he trusts and loves his teachers and knows that he's not going to be judged harshly, but he has no confidence in his writing competence. And that causes him great anxiety, and he shuts down and doesn't write. It's not because he's lazy. It's because he lacks the motivation to even get started because of his anxiety and lack of confidence. And of course, then you have the students who totally see the relevance in why they should do it, and they feel good that they can do it, but they think the teacher is unfair, or they don't know how they'll be graded. And suddenly they maybe don't lack that motivation that they would otherwise have if that instructor communicated better with them, or if they trusted them more. So those are the three things that they need. They all work together. You have to have all three of these in order to have a motivated writer. So how do you get those three things? Well, first of all, if the first thing up here was, why is this not doing what I want it to do? Oh, go backwards. Okay. If you want them to be interested and find the value in it, that task has to be attractive. I hate that word. I hate the word attractive when it comes to writing things, but all the researchers in their big language call writing tasks attractive or unattractive. I don't know. Anyway, but an attractive writing assignment or an attractive writing task that you're giving a student needs to be authentic, which I also kind of hate that word, to be honest with you. Authentic basically just means that the student has to feel like their thoughts and feelings will be expressed, as well as feeling like the assignment has actual personal meaning for them. So an example, I had my students writing poems about whatever they were raised by. We called them raised by poems. I had a lot of students who loved it. They thought it was great. They felt like they were really being heard. The poetry writing had deep personal meaning for them, and they were showing it to their friends, and I could see them, do you want to read this? Do you want to read this? And they were talking about posting it on all of their social medias, whatever. But then I also had students who were like, I don't want to read this poem. Poetry writing is dumb. I hate poems. This is dumb. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about my personal life. So you're not going to be 100% for all the kids all the time, but it's important to be diverse, right? So that you have diverse assignments so that you can bring up things that are authentic to, every kid in the class. And when they see that, even if one particular task doesn't really feel authentic to them personally, they're more apt to do it knowing that you are the type of teacher to search for other things that might in the future also feel authentic to them. So it all kind of goes together there. They also need an interesting task. That doesn't always mean just the topic. A lot of times we think, if we let the kid choose the topic, then that's interesting to them. But that's not always 100% either, because, like I have a kid who loves dragons, And you could say, oh, you can write about dragons today when we do this essay. An essay is going to be a major turnoff to him. And as much as he loves dragons, he's not going to want to write about dragons. But if you said, you get to make up a story about anything you want, and whatever it is that you choose in that story has to have something to do with the problem of learning to tie shoes. And he was allowed to pick a dragon, he'd probably write you a great story. So it can't just be the topic. It also has to be the writing task that's interesting to the student. And then lastly, it has to be challenging, but it can't be too challenging that they don't feel confident, right? Because then that goes back to the confident and competence part. If it's too challenging, they're not going to attempt it. But it has to have enough difficulty that it's like, I think I could do that. They feel confident that they could take it on. All right. So when you're besides having attractive tasks that kids are like, yes, that sounds great, I would love to do that, they also have to feel like they can write. And I've had, by the 8th grade, I get lots of students who are like, I mean, I think I would write more if I felt like I could do it. Like, I'm just not good at it. I'm not good at it, they say a lot. And they feel not good at it because they haven't really rehearsed all the steps in the process, so they get stuck in places. And I will say 82% of the time, if I have a student stuck with writing, they are in this planning stage somewhere. Planning gets kids stuck. So in the first 3 steps in writing is freeing your ideas, which is what I asked you guys to do when I asked you to make that big list of memories. First, you have to get them out. Some people like to put them on sticky notes so that they can like physically manipulate them later when they're sorting things. Some people like to write them in a notebook. I'm a notebook person. So it's really up to you. Then the next step is to sort them. You want to consider the task you need to do and the audience. So what things would the audience want to read about that also will make your task interesting to you? So that's why I asked you to kind of go through and find 2 or 3 things from your list that you could expand into a paragraph, something that you felt was a story you could tell. Because the task is that you're telling me a story, and you'll be able to use this in future classes as well. You're telling the story of how you came to feel about writing. And so there will be some things that are better, or the written word. So there will be some things on your list that are better suited for that. So you're going to sort those out. The last thing that you do in the planning stage is you shape your ideas. So you put your ideas in some sort of shape. In the past, that meant you had to make an outline. We don't necessarily, I, at least in best practice, doesn't necessarily push outlines on students anymore. The formal kind with the Roman numeral 1 and then A and then little 1 and then little a. And we don't do any of that stuff anymore. But you can, and if you're doing a narrative, you could, and this is where Post-it notes also come in handy, you can put them out in the storyboard format that you'd want to put it in. If you're doing an essay, you might put things for like informational, you might put like ideas together. Or if it's a how-to, that's kind of narrative-ish as well. So you'd put them in order. If you're doing an argumentative piece, you might clump things that go together, evidence and reasonings together. So that's where that planning part is so crucial. And I feel like we rush that often as educators and think that it's easy, they can quick do it, but it's very hard for some students to get that laid out. Once they get that all laid out, then they can go into the translating phase of writing. That's when step 4, your ideas, you set the stage for your ideas. You somehow introduce them. You find a way to introduce those. When we write narratives, and it's kind of fun that my students will be writing narratives and informational stuff while I'm teaching this course. But when they do that, when I ask them to set it up, we try out a lot of, like gotchas, we call them, like reel them in type of things. We try out a bunch and we get rid of the ones that sound fake to us or not really our style. But you want to make sure that okay, this is how I'm going to set the stage for my story or whatever. Then you want to dress your ideas in words. Okay, now we need to figure out what kind of word choice are we going to use? What are the best transitions for this type of writing? What is the language of this genre? So if you're looking at informational writing, how to, things like first, second, third, those are the kinds of things we teach little kids to do, right? Next, finally, those are the kinds of transition words that we want to teach kids. And then the last thing in the translating is connecting the ideas. You're laying down the structure, you're drafting, you're connecting all the parts, you're putting it all together, and then you're wrapping it up at the end. A lot of kids feel like they're done. Once they've done the planning and the translating, they're done. And a lot of teachers also just will mention, okay, don't forget to revise. Don't forget to proofread, and they won't devote as much time again to teaching that. And when you don't teach the skills and devote time to helping kids learn it, they don't feel confident. They feel like bad writers. So the revising phase of writing steps is just as important as the freeing ideas, right? We need to error hunt. We need to teach kids how to self-question and fix mistakes. Read things out loud to yourself. Go over. And once they can do it for their own, they can do it for somebody else. Once they feel confident doing it in their own work, they'll feel confident doing it in someone else's work. The missing links is the next step. Ask, does this make sense? Is this clear? Did I miss information? A lot of times that means having to have a partner, because as I tell my kids when they're doing informational stuff, you're an expert on this. So you might be leaving out information that you don't realize you're leaving out for someone who has no idea how to do this thing. So you want to find someone who knows nothing about Pokemon evolving and read this to them and see if it's clear, see if it makes sense, see if they know what you're talking about. And then once that's all done, you have quality control. Quality control is that last rereading and evaluating to make sure you have not missed anything. It's dotting the I's and lowercase j's and crossing those T's, making sure that everything is exactly the way you want it. Is my header in the right spot? Do I have a title? Did I write the end? I should not have written the end. Those kind of things. So it's just as important. I feel like many instructors kind of do the planning, maybe do the revising, but they focus everything on the translating, everything on this drafting. And if you do that, only certain kids who intrinsically understand putting information onto the page are going to succeed. You're going to lose all the students who need the planning stage taught to them, who need the revising stage taught to them. So getting kids to do these things builds confidence and competence and will make your evaluating much better. All right, so how to promote motivation to write in the classroom? Well, this is a little bit of a review. We want to propose meaningful opportunities for students to write. And I often say we want to write all the time. My students write every day, sometimes for a little. So I get the kids going, phew, only 7 minutes of writing today. Thank goodness. And then I get other kids who are like, yes, we're writing for 30 minutes today. So, you want to provide them meaningful opportunities that all look different from each other. If you are one of those people who's looking over those Common Core State standards, you'll see one of the standards in every single grade level is to write for various lengths of time and for various purposes and audiences. Secondly, we want to promote opportunities comparing literacies in and out of school and clarify the different characteristics of both. So we don't want to, a lot of times, like school writing is the elephant in the room. Like we want to teach kids to be good essay writers and to write things for school purposes and tests, but we don't want to focus on it because it's icky. Nobody really likes it. That's why it's really important for kids to see, like, okay, this is what real world stuff looks like out of school literacies look like, stuff that I have to be able to read and write outside of school. But this is the stuff that I'm going to have to read and write inside of school. And I think by the secondary, intermediate, and secondary, if we're not teaching students to understand school communication and writing, and that it's something that they will be doing, at least through the 12th grade, and for many of them beyond, we're doing them a disservice. So we want to be able to have those discussions and give them opportunities to compare informational essay writing with, brochure writing, and how are they the same? How are they different? And do both. Facilitate the management of writing skills. That's what I just went over with the 9. Check students' motivation to write. I'm a big proponent of checking in with students. How are you guys feeling about this? Who finds this interesting? Who is over it? Who is bored by that? What do you think? Why do you think that is? Why does that not make sense to you? Ask lots of questions. Balance individual with collaborative. Nobody likes to work alone all the time, and nobody likes to work with groups all the time. So we want to make sure that we are balancing that. And then the evaluate the students' writing, which we'll get more into later. All right, my final thoughts on this that I would love for, I guess not 2 final thoughts, but maybe 2 takeaways that I hope that you got from all this. Motivation for writing is not about the will to do it, but rather the attitude towards it. It's not whether or not a student is lazy. It's about many other things. And really, this lecture didn't even touch on the extrinsic things, the outside of school things that could be contributing to the lack of motivation. If a student's sleeping in your class because they've been up all night with a sick sibling because their parent was at work, they might not really care about your task. And that doesn't have anything to do with how interesting or authentic it is. They might think it's great. They might really want to do it, but they're so tired. Again, it's not laziness. So we need to, one of the best pieces of information or advice that I ever got as an educator was communication, or behavior is communication. So you look at the student who's not working, and they're communicating something to you, either about their motivation or about their competence or their perceived competence. So it is never okay, in my opinion, to label a kid lazy. I might say that I have a kid who's my own child's kind of lazy about doing his chores, but that again is really about motivation and not about lazy. And then my other takeaway I hope you get is that students need to be taught the writing skills if they're going to feel competent and confident. They need the skills. It just doesn't come. So as you read this week, you'll be reading informational writing and how to teach it. I want you to kind of think about what motivates you when you're taking on a writing task. And what do you need to know before you begin writing that helps you to feel confident that you can do it and that makes you feel competent as a writer? So think about those things as you go through this week. And those could possibly be questions that you could use as you begin drafting your literacy narrative as well. What kinds of things were motivating to you over the years? And what kinds of things helped you be confident and competent as a writer? Maybe which things, took away from those. And I know that not everyone here is going into ELA. I have some people who are double majoring in ELA or doing an ELA focus, but there are some of you who are science, math, social studies, whatever, and you're not ELA focused. But if you're going to have, an elementary classroom, you will still be doing ELA, but it's not your personal focus. So then it's even a bigger deal to me to read those, because I want to know, as somebody who's not choosing to go into ELA, science or math or whatever is your passion, what are some of the things that maybe makes you not, because I've read some of you say, I don't really feel like that great of a writer, or I never liked writing. And so think about Was it a motivation thing? Was it a competence thing? What was happening there? All right, and lastly, just the assignment review. One last time, you can find these all over e-learning as well. Bailey and Haley did a great job picking articles for us to respond to this week, so make sure you head over to the discussion board for that. Catherine and Brittany S. will be posting for next week, Chapter 3 in the writing feed, response number 4 for that, and then 3 to 4 questions for Mrs. Dawn Mast on the form. And then, so all of those things will get turned in somehow to me, either via the discussion board or whatever. And then on your own, you should begin drafting your literacy narrative. If there's any ideas you want to bounce off of me or anything, please feel free to email me. I am also going to put up a thread in the discussion boards, a topic for you all to be able to discuss your literacy narratives with each other. If we were in person, I would have you guys workshopping these in class, bringing your drafts to class to read with each other and get ideas from each other. And so I'd love it if you guys could still do that. So I'm going to put a thread. Obviously, I can't make you do it, but I'm going to put a thread up for you to exchange email addresses, or, if you want to use WebEx or Zoom or whatever to FaceTime, whatever, to talk with each other, or if you just want to do it via email or phone or whatever. But if I put a spot there for you to put your emails, then, or to even just talk there, bouncing ideas around, I will, unless I'm specifically asked, I will let you all do the workshopping in that area. I'll probably call it writer's workshop for this class. And then that's where you can put your things. So that is all I have for you for this week. Sitting here with my just showered hair, my Wyoming Wolves hoodie. Again, I am so sorry about the Jen Slanger interview. Kicking myself. Anyway, I'm going to go put my children to bed and make sure that my husband is not overdoing it, since he's not supposed to be lifting or bending or any of those things after his surgery. And I hope all of you have a wonderful week and reach out to me if you need me. Bye.